I'm Gary Nickerson,
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
and this is Outside My Window. Well, our guest really doesn't need an introduction, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. Phil Demille, founder of the Coal Shed Music Festival. Phil, welcome back to another podcast. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
So, it started out in year one as one weekend. It grew and grew and grew and grew to 3 weekends. Take us back to that year one. How did it all start?
Well, the discussion actually started in 2006. That is, looking at the possibility of doing something on the waterfront with the town council and so on at the time. There was discussion going on, and actually we didn't get off the ground until 2007. And my proposal at the time was that we try a weekend of entertainment, and that it would be my responsibility to go out and gather the sponsors to be able to actually make the thing happen, and use it as a kind of an indirect fundraiser for the school breakfast programs of the area. We had, in the beginning, had no idea really what the success would be. I felt that it would be a success, but I think a lot of people were just a little bit apprehensive about knowing where exactly it might go. But that was in 2007. It was a one weekend. Actually, we experimented over the following 2 or 3 years. We went in at one point with a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then we did 2 weekends, I believe, in 1 or 2 years. And then finally we settled on 3 weekends, each weekend, including the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that's a good combination, except for one thing, and that is it's not enough time. The Thursdays were never really as successful as I had hoped. And I think the big reason for that, of course, is that people are working on the Thursdays. They're a little bit reluctant maybe to go out on the Thursday night, having work to face them the next morning and so on. But certainly the Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays have been very successful. And at some point in time, I would love to expand it into the Labor Day weekend as well. But that's down the road. That's not for the immediate future.
Do you think, Phil, that after that first festival, and the preceding ones after that more people became aware of the incredible amount of musical talent in this region? I know I certainly was blown away.
Oh, I think so. I think a lot of people. It isn't that they have nothing basically against the idea of local entertainment, but they really don't have much of an opportunity anymore to be really introduced to a lot of the local entertainment other than through shows such as this one. And I think it really opened a lot of eyes. I think it helped people realize what we have here. We have a definite advantage, I feel, in the amount of local entertainment, local talent that we have of all ages. I mean, we have little children who are talented. We have elderly folks who are talented, and all those in between, and not just one group of people. We have 2 languages that we're dealing with locally, and try to accommodate both as best we can. I think it's been a real exercise in making the local community aware of what we have.
And as you mentioned, the different genres of music that are available for
Yes.
all tastes, whether it's country and western, whether it's the good old fashioned rock and roll, or the
Yes.
newer rock or what have you. It's everything, isn't it?
Yes, and we've tried different approaches on that as well, Gary. We've, for instance, at one point had set aside certain days for country, certain days for blues, certain days for rock, and then we decided, let's just book them as they come, so to speak. And I find that approach works as well as any. The theme days, they were fine, but sometimes people will stay away on certain theme days, if you know what I mean. If it's just kind of a general introduction of all types of entertainment, they'll come just out of curiosity. And very often people in coming there will be introduced to a type of music that perhaps they had not been introduced before, and say, "Gee, I enjoyed that. I didn't realize that there was so much to it." So, we book as the calls come in, as they say, and that's the way it seems to have worked out over the past, I'll say, half dozen years or so.
Do you think the Coal Shed Music Festival has also brought out some new talent? Maybe folks that are, just playing at home or in the garage. They come, they see the festival, and they think, hey, maybe I should approach Phil or someone else and see if I can, get on the list and give it a go and maybe build their local music career somewhat. What are you getting in terms of feedback like that, Phil?
Oh yeah. You've hit it right on. People will come there, and very often, we'll end up in a discussion while the festival's going on, in fact. And certainly in the time following the festival, we'll meet people who will say, I was down such and such a day or such and such an evening, and I saw this particular act, and I really enjoyed it. Oh, by the way, I play this, or I sing, or whatever. With any chance of me getting involved? And I always say absolutely. We encourage as much local involvement, participation as possible. We're not out to exclude anyone, that's for sure. And it's reached a point now where our problem is that we just don't have the space to accommodate everyone. And what happens is that in a lot of cases, I start getting calls every year, somewhere around Christmas time, shortly after. And, as the calls come in, we reserve time for that particular individual or group and so on. And then I'll have calls sometimes in July. And the person will say, well, I guess it's just about time I called you for space, for our group to perform in the festival. And I'm sorry, July is, unless we have a last-minute cancellation or something, July is just too late. I mean, our program is certainly well over being finalized at that point. The posters are out. Things are in place at that time. So yes, there's no question that it does draw people out that perhaps otherwise never would even give a thought to performing in front of people. I can think of many people where that has certainly been the case.
So speaking of draw, Phil, how's the reach? Like, how far away are you getting acts coming in that want to play at the Coal Shed?
Boy, that's a tough one because it varies from year to year. For instance, we have one group coming in this year from Boston. We have, over the past number of years, had several from Ontario. We've had a couple people from the West who've been traveling through the Maritimes and heard about the festival and called us. Certainly all over the Maritimes, we have people, coming in to participate. To put a figure on it, I don't know that I can, because it does vary from year to year. But it's certainly not exclusively a local event in terms of who it attracts. We have people from, as I say, from almost everywhere who, if they happen to hear about us or have been here before or have heard through friends or whatever, we certainly welcome those people as well.
Would some of them have connections, like, maybe their parents were from the area or whichever, that kind of give them that little extra draw?
Yeah, sometimes. One of the groups we had from Ontario, as a matter of fact, had I believe it was a sister who at the time was living in Yarmouth, and they spoke to me well in advance of the festival and said that their family in Ontario had a group, and actually within the group there were 3 or 4 other groups, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
And they said, we'd love to have them involved, and they're thinking of coming to Yarmouth for vacation in the summer. I said, by all means, we would welcome them, and we worked out the details, and they were involved that year. I think that was probably 2013 or 14 that they were here.
Now, going back a couple of years, we know that COVID kind of yanked out the rug out from under a lot of different local festivals and such, and you were no exception. But with things looking like they're on the uptick, what's the docket look like for this year? Have you got a full slate?
We're I would say about 80% booked right now. I notified the town. As a matter of fact, I was looking at the letter the other day. We notified the town on November 1st, basically saying our plan is to go ahead with the festival for 2022. If you have any concerns or any questions or whatever, please notify us as soon as possible, because come January, we're going to start kicking things into gear and make sure that we have things in place. Well, I heard nothing, so by January 1st, we started. And since then, it has been busy. There has not been a day, I don't believe there's been a day that's gone by that I haven't either been on the phone or messaging or emailing back and forth between us and various performers concerning the festival for this year. So, yeah, the COVID really put a damper. The interesting thing about the COVID, as it pertains to the festival, is that a lot of people, and I've had this conversation with a number of people, a lot of people said, well, at least it gave you 2 years off. No, it did not give us 2 years off, anything but. In both years, I had most of the entertainment booked when the decision was made, or I guess more than the decision, it was an enforcement to say that, there would be no festivals, which meant I had to sit down then and contact the various people who had been lined up. I had to return all of the sponsor money that had been sent in, and it was far more work than as if the festival had been in place. So, those are the things that go on behind the scenes that people don't realize.
I was going to ask you if the COVID, gave you time to sort of reflect, and as I know you do each year, you're always looking toward the next year. But apparently, you didn't have a whole lot of time to sit
Not
and
really.
reflect. Did you?
Mind you, it did give us time over the summers because it was just like a big cavity in those 2 summers. That nothing going on the waterfront seemed to be, it seemed very different from what it had been since 2007. And it certainly did give us time to reflect and look at things that had worked and things that didn't work, and improve upon those things accordingly. So yes, there was certainly time to think about it and to do a little bit of evaluation behind the scenes. But there's no question that those 2 years, just because the festival was canceled, it in no way meant that we were able to sit down and relax. I guess that's the best way to put it.
And the thing is that, as part of all this, it's all volunteer time. And,
yes.
And as we, as we come out of volunteer month, as we do every year in April, shows like this don't happen without volunteers.
No, we have a small group of very dedicated volunteers, and they are there almost as many hours as I'm there. And I'm there for the most part from 9 in the morning until 10:30 or 11 at night for every day of the festival. And we have a few others who are as crazy as I am, and they put in the hours too. But that's a vital part of it. If you don't have, like different people have said, why don't you have more volunteers? Well, it's easy to say that. Like I've had a discussion with a couple of people who said, there's going to be a time when maybe you're not going to be able to do this anymore. And certainly that will happen at some point. And the question has always been, why aren't you grooming someone to take over? And I always say, that's a great idea. Who do you suggest? And then there's a silence.
Yeah.
Because lots of people are enthusiastic about the idea, but when it comes down to brass tacks and they look at the amount of time commitment, they're less enthusiastic about being involved as a total volunteer. And that is the reason. I mean, we certainly have a small group, as I said before, of dedicated people, and there's every indication, certainly at some point, there will be changes. I hope that over the years in the future, that someone will pick up the reins and carry on and do it in the same vein. I do it because I want to do it. I do not do it for any monetary reward whatsoever, because I don't believe that is the purpose of it. I love to be able to do my part to help the schools in the area. And by the way, we expand the number of schools each year. We visit now all the schools from Drumlin straight around to Port Maitland and all of the small schools in the outlying areas.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, we've been giving them a little over $7,000 a year for the last number of years, and that's pretty remarkable. I'm not patting myself on the back, I'm patting the community on the back when I say this, because we do not charge an admission. So what we get at the door in the form of donations covers our expenses, and then we in turn, reach out to the schools and do what we can to help them out.
And
So
it's
that's the
always
way
been
it
that
works.
way, hasn't it, Phil?
It's been that way since day one. Mind you, there are people who are still upset with me because we don't charge admission, and I think I've gone through that with you before. I am absolutely against that, and my main reason for that is that we have some of the people in our community. Let's be honest, who are on a fixed income, shall we say, maybe not even full-time employment in a few cases, maybe single parents. I'm not trying to pick out any certain group, but there are a number of people in the community who don't have a lot of money to spend on extras. And I would hate to think that there would be a festival taking place practically in their backyard that they could not attend because they couldn't afford to. To me, that would be a real kick in the face. And for that reason, I do not believe in that. I had one person say to me, well, you should be charging like $20 or $10 at the door. Well, it's easy to say that, but, realistically, an outdoor type of festival such as that, and in the area where it's located, our numbers would drop drastically if we charged those kind of figures. And I'm not in the slightest way interested. We have people who come in through the entrance into the tent and they don't put a cent in the donation jar. We might have somebody walking in behind them that drops a $20 bill. So there you go. You do what you can do, you do what you can afford, and I think that is a very integral part of what this is supposed to be in our community.
But that's also the spirit of the breakfast program, which is the main charity that you support.
Yes, it definitely is. Exactly. Couldn't have said it better. Absolutely. It's interesting. Sorry to interrupt, but I was just going to say it's interesting when we get out to some of the smaller schools. We've been there now enough times that when we call them and make arrangements to visit, they're looking forward to it because we usually put it later in the year when their funding, I'm sure, is starting to run short, and they really appreciate that extra little boost that we are able to provide. And, it's made for, I think, a good relationship with a lot of the communities and with Yarmouth Town itself. It's, we've been able to draw in those people and get them involved, and it's kind of a mutual appreciation sort of thing, in my view. And to me, that's an important part of any community.
Well, certainly, people should give back into their community what they can afford to do, but also, everybody's got a skill somewhere that they can put to good use to be able to give back into the community. You don't have to be an athlete. You don't have to be, good with your hands per se or anything along that line. Everybody's got something to give, even if it is just time. That's
right. And, you may look at it and say, oh, well, what could I ever do to assist this? Well, you might be surprised.
Yeah.
Just having 2 or 3 people around the front of the entrance, for instance, is a help, especially when we have big crowds, because we may have a senior, for instance, who is finding it difficult to walk through a large number of people, and perhaps they need assistance in finding a seat. And it's nice to have someone there who can provide that assistance. That's the kind of thing when I think of volunteers. That's the kind of thing that I look for, because I think that's important. Sometimes we'll get somebody, for instance, who will drive up in front of the tent, stop their car, and roll their window down to listen to the entertainment. Well, their intentions are all good, but they're also in everybody's way. So, we try to tactfully approach them and say, look, sir or ma'am, you just simply can't stay here in this spot because you're obstructing, everybody's path. And any number of things, helping musicians carrying equipment to the stage, taking it off the stage after they're finished. There's a number of things. Being MCs, being a host for a couple of hours. The first 3 or 4 years, I tried to do it all by myself. I've never been so exhausted in my life, and I grew up on a dairy farm where I worked a lot. But believe me, that's tiresome. When you stand up and start hosting events for 10 hours a day, you are done by the end of the day. So I got out of that. I still do my share, but I've involved several other people, Laurent d'Entremont and a few others, and it's been such a help to feel that, someone else can kind of pick up, even if it's, like I say, even if it's for 2 or 3 hours, it's a help. So there's all sorts of places for volunteers to be part of it.
Well, one thing about having Laurent d'Entremont show up is that you're good for a story or two.
Oh, and the stories that he repeats with me get funnier every time I hear them. I'm never bored. I'm never bored with his stories.
No, never. We had him on the podcast once. Gary and I were cracking up the whole time.
Oh yeah, he's
barely composed.
He's just a gem, that guy. No question about it.
Phil, with the continued tremendous success of the Coal Shed Music Festival, have organizers of other music festivals in Nova Scotia, even the Atlantic provinces, who have sat back and thought, wow, I got to get a hold of this Phil Demille guy and see what maybe get some tips from him, right?
Yeah.
Has that
well,
occurred?
That isn't. It has happened. Yes, it has. And the question usually is, we're representing so-and-so, and could you give us a little bit of detail about your event? And all it boils down to, in most cases, is how in the heck are you doing it without charging?
Yeah.
And my answer to that is simple. I have a lot of friends who are musicians. I have a lot of friends who are in the business community, and even more people who believe in the event. And I know that there are festivals over the years in various locations they've had financial problems. Let's be honest. Some of them are not even in existence anymore. And part of the reason is that maybe they've outpriced themselves. It's great to have the big names on the stage, and I certainly we certainly try our best to make sure we have a few of those as well. But reality is that the local community, for most people, simply can't afford that. And perhaps the lesser known performers, in many cases, are just as good at entertaining. I've had a few well-known people over the years, since being involved in the school and involved in this as well, who in a lot of cases are tremendous, but in some cases they're a disappointment. Let's be honest.
Phil, any kind of event like the Coal Shed Music Festival obviously relies on sponsors. They always play such an important role. Can you talk about some of those sponsors that have come back year after year, and perhaps some new ones?
Oh yeah. Well, for instance, I'll just give you a few, and I almost hesitate to give you any, because then they'll say, "How come you never mention me?" But I'll mention just a few, just off the top of my head. Certainly, the radio station's been helpful, very helpful over the years. The Pleasant Supplies, Rod's Hotels and Resorts. Atlantic Lottery has from time to time assisted us. The Municipality of Yarmouth, Town of Yarmouth, some of the real estate companies, Canada Trust, Toronto Dominion, they've been very helpful. The Coastal Credit Union, Coastal Financial Credit Union, they've all assisted over a period of time and been a big help to us for sure.
With that, you're just covering your costs with the sponsorships, and everything goes back into the breakfast program and your charity that you support.
Yes, yeah. We always keep an account open. Of course, we have to, because there are expenses over the winter months as well. But the bulk of it goes to the purpose of helping the breakfast programs of the area. That is after our expenses are met.
Of course.
Naturally, that's our first priority. We have to make sure everything is paid for.
Now, with the advent of social media, which certainly wasn't around in its current form back when you started, how has social media helped promote the festival?
Well, I think it helped a great deal in getting the word out to masses of people that perhaps otherwise wouldn't even be aware. Facebook, for instance, has been tremendous. Just the whole community, as far as the media community, without it, we would be dead in the water. We just couldn't operate. And we spend a fair amount on advertising, mind you. But excuse me, as time goes on, I don't think that advertising budget in and of itself will necessarily go up a lot because of the fact that we do have things like Facebook that gets the word out to more people that otherwise you would have to pay a great deal for.
The reach is much better, of course, as well.
Oh, no question.
Now, one thing, when looking back at prior years' festivals, it's not just the music on stage. You do a bunch of other little side events as well, right?
Yes, we do. We have a lot of workshops, instrument workshops and that sort of thing. We have kitchen parties. We have songwriting contests and songwriting workshops. We try to, use as much imagination as we can in offering a variety. And of course, there again, volunteers play a big part. I mean, if we have someone to come in and lead a kitchen party event, I've seen Rudder's tent as full as the main tent when a kitchen party was going on. Because
nothing like a good old-fashioned kitchen party.
They love it. People love that. And, that kind of stuff certainly would not happen if it weren't for a group of volunteers who are willing to come in and give of their time. The workshops, we've had instrument builders, of course, come in. We've had jam sessions, and they're a little bit different than a kitchen party because they tend generally to be a smaller group. But the fact that we've had the kiln building, to use, as well as the Rudder's tent in the past, has given us two other options where we can offer activities while the main stage is busy. And I find that is something that people really appreciate. I just hope that can continue in the future.
So something none of us has any control over, as we certainly know from this past winter, is the weather. You've been pretty lucky as far as weather goes over the last few years. Nothing you can do about it, but obviously you keep a close watch on it.
Yes, we have been very fortunate. The weather for the most part has not really prevented us from having a full day of activity. I have seen cases where it was raining pretty hard and there was a stream of water flowing down the main part of the tent floor, but of course the people were were protected from it in the tent, and the show went on. Wind is an issue because when you're in a tent and you're in the midst of a high windstorm or the threat of a hurricane, that gets to be a different story. But we have over the number of years since 2007, I don't believe we've had more than maybe one evening when we had to cancel our events due to bad weather.
That's a pretty good record.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes.
And you were before we went on tape. You mentioned something about trying to take the tent down in the middle of a hurricane. Yeah,
I don't. Again, I'm not sure how many years ago. This would be probably. I'm thinking 6-7 years ago, something like that. We one year. Keep in mind this is all happening late August, so you're just kind of on the fringe of hurricane season. I got home that night from the waterfront, and about 2 a.m, the phone rang. It was one of the security guys, and he said, "You got to come down here." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm telling you," he said, "we're going to lose this tent if we don't get some means of getting it down." This is 2 a.m. I raced down to the waterfront, and between the security guy and myself, we took the tent down. And believe me, it was not any fun. It was dangerous, but we managed to come out of it. We survived. We're survivors,
Wow.
It's actually a job for a dozen people, no question, but we somehow did it. I don't know how we did it. And then, of course, we had to put it back up the next day.
Exactly.
And that's not fun either.
I can just picture you just being kind of like swept over the edge there with this canopy, holding onto the canopy, right?
I tell you, you grab a section of that tent, and like even this morning, the high winds this morning, if you can multiply that by about 10, that's what we were facing. So it was not fun, but we did it. you do what you got to do, as they say.
Well, that's right. So I mean,
Yeah.
certainly that's one story. But if you had to reflect back on the last 15 years of this, have you got any other stories you want to share?
Well, I don't know that there's actually an individual story or a small group of stories. Just kind of a general overview. I would say so far, and I have no reason to believe otherwise for the future. It's a great opportunity for people to meet new friends, make new friends. It's just it's such a positive experience for so many people that I believe in it now even more than I did when we started in 2007. I just think that it's something well worth developing far beyond what it is now. People look at it and say 9 days, boy, that's a long time. Yes, it is a long time, but this should be taking more time in the summer months because certainly the opportunities are there. And let's face it, it's during the peak tourist season. So what better draw would there be for people to come here if they can find a place where there's free entertainment every day? you know, it, but to stories, no, I can't. No particular story. We've had pretty clear sailing actually. We've had no real serious accidents or injuries to speak of. So no, I can't say that there's really any story that stands out other than, as I say, I look at it as a positive experience in many, many ways.
So the boat is scheduled to start sailing again. Do you think you'll get some tourists kind of wandering by?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, when the boats were on before, see, they were still in operation when we started this back in 2007, and there were times, especially during those early years, there were times when probably half the tent was full of tourists. So yes, there's no question about it. We had one couple from Long Island, New York, who happened to stay here. Their plan was not to stay in Yarmouth at all, but they ended up staying here for a night or so at the Grand, and they heard about the festival. They came down, and they loved it. They just loved it. In fact, Terry Kelly was one of the people playing the first
Nice.
time they were here, and they said, "Look, this guy's one of the best performers we've ever seen," and I agree with that. I'm a big believer in what Terry Kelly does. And anyway, they make a long story a little shorter. Came every year up until the pandemic 2 years ago, and I have no reason to believe otherwise. I'm sure they'll be here this year.
Wow.
They come every year. They spend a week at the Grand, or I assume they still stay at the Grand. I think they do. And during that time, they spend a large part of it on the waterfront at the festival. There are people who come home for family reunions because the festival is taking place. It's a positive thing, and as I say, I'm not patting myself on the back. People might look at that and say, "Oh yeah, you're just proud of yourself, aren't you?" No, that's not why I'm saying it. I'm saying it because it's something this community has every reason to be proud of.
And speaking of that, I mean, typically when you start looking at the success of a festival, one of the things that comes to mind, of course, is economic benefit to the community.
Oh, well.
And have you put a number to that based on the coal shed?
I know that we've done all kinds of fine tuning, as they say, over the years to try to really determine, how many people it does attract. And a conservative estimate would be somewhere for the month of August, somewhere in the vicinity of 9,000 plus extra people who are in Yarmouth because the festival is on.
Nice.
And now some people say, "Oh, that's crazy." No, it's not crazy. It's certainly it's as I said before, a conservative estimate because we're looking at about 1,000 people per day. Keeping in mind now that we're running that tent from 1 in the afternoon until about 10 at night. Sometimes it goes a little beyond 10. So that's, roughly 10 hours of activity every day. And that tent for those hours, I'm sorry, the people within the tent, some move on and they're replaced
Sure.
by another group and so on. So it holds 200 and some people or whatever, and that 200 changes several times over that 10-hour period.
Of course.
So it's certainly not unreasonable to say that 1,000 people per day would be involved in some way or another, keeping in mind that we have 3 activities going on for a lot of the time.
And you've got the economic benefit of some of the bands coming in from outside of town, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I mean, I have friends who have retail businesses, and one in particular has said that many times has said to me that the 3 weeks in August are the best 3 weeks for his year.
Yeah.
And he's in retail. And I said, you're talking even the Christmas season? Oh, definitely, he said.
Wow.
So, and he's told me that more than once. So he must mean it, I guess.
Now, in your spare time, you still playing with the band Hourglass. Are you guys looking at a busy summer?
Yes, we do have a very busy summer this year. We're doing a couple of big reunion events. One's the 50s, another one's 60s and 70s. We're doing the car show. We're doing the festival of Fox Mountain. We're doing the big summer event in Shelburne at the Guildhall. Every weekend up until, and then we're doing an exhibition or two as well. So right up to the Cold Shed festival time, it's very, very busy. And I sort of predicted that, because last year, of course, everybody that played music, for the most part, played in their living room because there was nowhere else to play. So I said, once things start to lift, I think you're going to see a whole new approach to hiring groups, solos, whatever. And it's certainly proving to be true. People want to get out. They want some entertainment. They're tired and sick of staying home.
I'll tell you, I mean, I work from home, and I've worked from home since before COVID struck. And man, I've never gone a week on $20 worth of gas since I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
And yet here I am, right? And I mean, that's even with the price of gas being what it is. I got to get out of the house. This is driving me nuts.
I'm the same way. I can't stand just. I'm not an indoor person anyway. I mean, that was about the only thing that I never liked about my job when I worked in the school system. The fact that I was indoors all the time, and I loved the job otherwise. But I love my vegetable gardens, and I love to work with my boys on the farm, and that kind of stuff. I'm an outdoor person, that's for sure. But the last 2 years has been an experience for sure for all of us.
And I can speak for Gary as well when I say we're looking forward to getting out.
Oh yeah. I think it's good. It's therapy. Let's face it, for people to get out and do things.
Well, music and food seem to bring people together, and certainly when you look at the kitchen party type atmosphere, one of the things that kind of mushroomed out quite a bit during the COVID times was a Facebook group for the Nova Scotia Kitchen Party. So, question comes to mind: is there an option at some point maybe that some of the Coal Shed might be live streamed?
Oh well, hey, I'm open to anything. Sure, absolutely.
I know there's some issues when it comes to copyright and so on when you're dealing with
that's the only thing. You have to check out the details on it, but absolutely, I'm not in no way am I opposed to that kind of idea. I think that the more we do to keep people informed and keep them entertained, the better off everybody is.
Wanted to ask you about marketing, Phil. I'm sure, as you know, the province, Bay Ferries, and Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourism Association are focusing on southwestern Nova Scotia as a destination for 2022. Are you satisfied, Phil, with the tourism promotion that you're getting from whether it's a province or locally? Are they promoting music festivals like the Coal Shed enough to, certainly the New England market?
I think so. To be honest, Gary, I haven't really spent a lot of time checking up on that, but from anything that I've heard, yes, I think they're doing a good job. Yeah. our best ambassadors are people who have been here and who go back to their various communities and tell other people about the event. That's always, I would say, our first line of getting the word out. But any form of advertising is a help for sure. And I would say they're doing a decent job. Yes.
So if anybody out there is listening and thinking, I'd love to be able to give Phil a hand with this thing, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Just give me a call. 902-742-3368.
Yeah, you put the number out, Phil. You're going to get some phone calls. We're hoping that you'll get some phone calls, right?
That's fine. I welcome that. That's part of it. And as I said before, I'd rather have 8 or 10 really good, reliable people, volunteers that I know I can depend upon, rather than having 50 that I'm wondering, well, now are they going to show up today, or last minute call-ins? I can't make it now because this is that kind of stuff drives me crazy.
Sure.
I'd rather have the ones I can depend upon, even if it's just a few.
And everybody has something
sense?
to give. No, it makes perfect sense. And again, reiterating, everybody has something to give, even if it is just time.
Sure they do. Absolutely.
And those people that you mentioned who are dedicated and committed, they're the ones that come back each year, I would assume.
Every year. No question about it. They're there every year. I can almost guarantee that certain individuals will be part of it from the beginning to the end every year.
And remind us all again of the dates, Phil.
The dates are August 12th, 13th, 14th, 19th, 20th, 21st, 26th, 27th, and 28th. 3-3-day weekends leading up to Labor Day, not including Labor Day weekend.
Gotcha. And at what point would you have your schedule kind of laid out and posted on Facebook?
Well, as I said before, the schedule right now is about 80% complete. I'm working with some other things on trying to finalize a few other things before I go public with anything. I'd rather it be as complete as possible before I start leaking out information, if you know what I mean.
I totally understand.
Once you start that, once you start, then it's a landslide. Well, how come so-and-so isn't there? That kind of stuff. And I just don't have the time for that. So we're holding back to give any information out. We certainly, I would say, should have everything finalized. Well, we're mid-April almost. Certainly by June, I would say everything should be finished. We normally try to get our actual poster out with the various pictures of those who are involved by somewheres around the first week of July. We have one poster out now, just kind of giving people a heads up that this is coming in August, but the completed poster, which lists off the various sponsors and some of the headliners and so on, that comes out in July, usually early July, and I believe that will be on schedule this year as well.
That's perfect. We're definitely going to be on the lookout for that, Phil, and we'll see you there.
I sure hope so.
So if you are listening, you've never been to the Coal Shed Music Festival, you got to come. I'll just repeat those dates again. Phil mentioned 3 weekends, August 12th through 14th, 19th through the 21st, and 26th to the 28th. It is a beautiful venue. You couldn't ask for a greater place, right, Phil? I mean, the Yarmouth waterfront is just gorgeous.
Well, I guess, as I've said many, many times over in the past, we are very fortunate, in my opinion, in having the nicest, or certainly one of the nicest waterfronts in the province. We just need to make sure it's used a lot. That's the one thing, I think there should be something going on that waterfront in the summer from the 1st of June until late September.
And you're doing your part, so...
I'm doing my part. I can't do any more. But there are service clubs, I'm sure, who would welcome an opportunity to, take it on for a weekend and perhaps use it as a fundraising event of some kind. That sort of thing is what I'd love to see happen.
For sure.
Yeah.
Phil, I've known you many, many years. If you go back to high school,
yes,
listen,
right.
yes. We won't get into the details.
And we
of
keep
my
getting younger,
academic
Gary. We
achievement.
keep-
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And listen, you're a modest guy. You said earlier in our chat, pat yourself on the back, and you don't. But on behalf of Quinn, I don't think I'll mind. We certainly, and many other people, want to pat you on the back for the continued success of the Coal Shed Music Festival, and so looking forward to this year. Phil, thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate that, Gary, very much, and I thank you for all that you do. And Quinn, I know that you're very community-minded guys, and that is what we so desperately need.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Phil.
Yeah.
Thanks, Phil. I'm Gary Nickerson,
And I'm Quinn Taggart.
and this has been Outside My Window.